When it comes to the idea of moving overseas, I often find people are in two dichotomous camps. On one side, people are needlessly petrified. On one side, people throw caution to the wind. Today, I'm going to answer a question about what to expect when moving overseas. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And as someone who has been traveling and then living full-time overseas for many years now, I think I'm qualified to talk about this and answer a question we got from Nikita, who says, Andrew, love the content you put out, have been binging on your channel. What would you say is the number one thing to consider when restarting your life abroad? In Nikita's case, that means outside of the United States. And I think my very simple answer to this, you can take this as a vague answer, but I think if you think about it, it's not at all vague, is that life will be different, but life will be better. And I think that the further you get away from your current culture, the more of that you'll see. It's almost like a bottle of wine. You open a beautiful, fine bottle of wine, you pour it into the glass, you're swirling it around, and you're taking in all the different parts of the wine. Oh, that's some blackberry, that's some chocolate, that's some tobacco. And what I would suggest is that you have the ability to dictate how far from your culture you want to go in order to dictate how different and hence potentially better life will be. And so one of the mistakes that I've talked to people making when they're evaluating places to live, or why they're making an excuse for why they don't want to go where they're treated best, is they'll say, hey, I live in the United States and I looked at moving to Canada and it wasn't any better. Well, in Canada, they're going to share your culture. They're going to share a language, by and large. They're going to share a lot of things in common to where you really, in the grand scheme of things, wouldn't notice a difference. Now, certainly, you could move from Cleveland, Ohio to Chicago, Illinois, and you could say, hey, I feel a difference. You could move just across your own country and feel a difference. But in the grand scheme of the world, I mean, certainly moving from the U.S. to Canada is much more palatable for most people than moving from the U.S. to Karachi, Pakistan. But what I think is worth considering when I say life will be different but better is when you look at places that perhaps others aren't considering, which is something we've been told you to do for a long time. Consider that you're going to move to, let's say, Serbia, where I'm sitting right now. Is the culture in Serbia the same? It's somewhat the same. For many people, the religion will be similar. The people will somewhat look similar. It's one of the few places here in Serbia where I'm not that tall at 6'4" and at 1.93 meters. But there are a number of similarities. Again, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably a lot easier to adapt to living in Belgrade than it is to adapt to living in Myanmar or Lesotho or even parts of Latin America. But it's also substantially different. Just the way people communicate is different. The holidays are different. If you come to Belgrade on December 25th, people are going to wonder why you're handing out gifts, why you're sitting at home and having a meal, right? And so I think that embracing that and understanding that opens up a lot of flexibility, because you know what else Serbia does? It's going to be different than, again, Nikita's United States, in that when they say, hey, you need to show us this document, they may not take it as seriously. Things are more open. Things are more casual, just in day-to-day life. And I think that you can use that to enjoy your life a bit more. You know what I enjoy is coming to places, Eastern Europe being one good example. Once you make friends, you can make very genuine friends, more so than I think you can in the United States. And, whereas I will meet American friends of mine and family members to this day, where you'll go to their house or you'll go to a restaurant and you'll go whatever, and after an hour or 2 hours or whatever, they're like, okay, well, we got to go. You're not going to necessarily have that in many of these places. I mean, go to a place where I have a lot of good friends is Georgia. And you'll just call people up and you'll just go out and have coffee for 5 hours and you'll just talk, through the day. Now, obviously, if you're bootstrapping your business, that may be less valuable than if you've already if you're already stepping back from business. But these are the things that are different but better. But I think you have to learn to accept the good with the bad. And one of the things that's been an issue for me and that I've really had to work on is saying, listen, I get all this good stuff. And in many cases, it could be the hard benefits, such as lower taxes, more freedoms, less bureaucracy, just less day-to-day nonsense. It could be softer benefits, just as I feel like I belong here, or the social culture is better, whether it's dating, whether it's friends, whatever. But with that comes, hey, listen, people aren't as polite, or you don't have as many services available, right? I was talking to a friend of mine today who was saying in Amazon, a lot of stuff he wants to buy in Amazon isn't available due to the supply chain issue right now. But obviously, and generally speaking, he can get a lot more things in the United States than you could get in Serbia or Georgia, whatever. Now you're seeing that change. You have marketplaces opening up in Southeast Asia, and you have Amazon coming into markets like Mexico and Colombia, etc. But you're going to have to change. Now, here's how I encourage people to prepare for that change, because obviously a lot of us look at the negatives. What am I giving up? And we skip all the positives, which is why I say run to something, not from something. But here's an example that I've done to a number of people recently that has helped put things in perspective. I was talking to a family recently, and the idea was if they were to move to one of these countries, that in the next 3 years, they could save about $6 million on their tax bill. And they would have to spend, in their particular situation, this is just a random situation, they would need to spend about 500 days in those 3 years to make the whole thing work. And I said, listen, $6 million, okay, divide that into 500 days. I mean, you're looking at, I went to public school, but I think that's $12,000 a day. Now, you don't have to do the 500 days all together. You get to do 500 days over the course of 3 years. So you've got, it's a little bit less than half. These are rough numbers I'm giving you. But imagine you got $12,000 a day to be left alone, to make more genuine friends, to perhaps have a bit more leisurely life, to have fewer worries about form filling or whatever else. And in exchange, Starbucks didn't have all your favorites. Or, I'll admit it, my guilty pleasure, when I lived in the United States, I'm a bit nostalgic. I had a friend and we would hit when I was 24, 25 years old, we'd hit the Taco Bell drive-thru at 2 in the morning when I was up working late. And I'll tell you what, for the first time in years, I recently found a Taco Bell, and guess what? They did not have all the classic favorites. Now, if I'm being paid $12,000 a day, I think I can handle not having that electric green Mountain Dew. And I tell people to put that in perspective. Because the question people are going to ask is, are they English speaking? We've recently talked about countries where even if they're not native English speaking, like in Ireland or a UK or a Cayman Islands or something like that, there are plenty of countries that are excellent and have very high proficiency in English. Otherwise, are you going to learn the language? Those are things people are concerned about, but there's a lot of countries where you can get by in English. What about the customs? We've talked about that. Can you get citizenship in the country? If you can get citizenship and diversify your portfolio, that makes not only are you getting $12,000 a day, but you're putting in time over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years to getting a passport that can help you with your international diversification. And if you like the place, then you can feel one with it and you can be a part of it. What are the tax incentives? How long do they last? And so, I've talked about, let's say you're an American, as Nikita is. Mexico certainly has much of the same service culture. You have countries like Ireland, which can be tax-friendly, where you can go and take advantage of people who are native English speakers, and the culture is very similar and all that, without the different language. These are countries that you can consider. But, again, I think that looking at how much am I willing to change, most people are not going to move to the aforementioned Karachi, Pakistan. They're not going to move to La Paz, Bolivia. They're not going to move to somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa. People will move places like a Malaysia, like a Thailand, like a Panama, like a Cayman Islands. Even people now are moving to places like Nicaragua. Why? Because they believe that in an era when freedom is on the decline, their personal freedoms will be substantially higher there, even though perhaps it's not quite as safe, Perhaps there aren't nearly as many services. They do need to learn a new language. This is the thing that I would give some thought to, and how far are you willing to put it? What are your most important goals? And from there, embrace the place or places that you choose. You could certainly have one, or you could have 3 different places. You could live the trifecta, and that could certainly help you diversify some of the culture shock and what have you, and we've talked about it for that reason. But if you embrace the pros and you have a certain gratitude for that, I think that helps drown out some of the cons. And so that's the one thing that I would think about. People focus on the cons. They focus on what could go wrong. They focus on what if. And I think that understanding that the further you're getting away from your culture, as scary as that may be, life will be different. But if you're doing it, it's because it's better. It's because you're getting something more valuable. You're saving money. You're getting more freedoms. You're having a better lifestyle, a better social life. Yes, there will be some trade-offs, but that's what I would consider if I'm moving overseas. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalists personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.